Welcome back to In Frame Brooklyn. Charlie from Real Brooklyn Films here, and I'm happy to be doing another video. 2 weeks from the last one. We had a great response on the last one. We got new subscribers. We even got more likes. So I'm hoping that we're on a trend here. So as I said in the last video, I just submitted Outcast Nation to NETA, which is the National Educational Telecommunications Association. They are one of two main distributors to PBS. They take your movie and then they distribute it to all the PBS stations, public broadcasting stations. So I sent it in and we were waiting to hear back, and we did hear back. There were a couple of small issues. Now, I've never done this before. Generally, I finish a movie and I just send it to festivals or put it on YouTube. So there were issues with regards to stereo tracking and stuff like that that I never dealt with before. So we'll talk about that. And the other thing I really want to get into this week is stylistic choices of your documentary before you roll 1 minute of video. These are things you should be thinking about how are you going to interview, what's it going to look like. And I want to really deep dive into that this week. And we'll get into that right after this. So, the first thing I want to talk about is this deliverable sound thing that I had to deal with. Now, when I shoot on the C300, I'm actually recording to the Ninja 5 like I'm doing on this, with the R6 right now. And I never really thought about which track it's going on. Sometimes it goes on 3 and 4. I don't know why. Sometimes it goes on 1 and 2. I don't know why. But once I get into Final Cut, it really doesn't matter. It's just the 2 channels. I didn't realize that when you actually output for broadcast, it does that. So when I heard back from my contact at NETA, he was like, you need to fix this because I got some things on channel 1 and 2, I got some things on 7 and 8, and I was like, oh, okay, didn't know that. So I went back in, and the other thing that needed to happen is because the C300 shoots to mono, and if you're running a lav, that's on mono also. So it's not a stereo channel. It's one mono channel and another mono channel. And they need stereo. So what that means is you have to take that mono channel, double it, and set it to channel 1 and channel 2 so that you've got a left and right channel. So I had to go back through the entire movie, which was a lot of fun, fix everything to channel 1 and channel 2, and double track everything, including the music, any of the voiceover stuff, everything, every piece of sound had to be double tracked into a stereo track. I think it's done. I am resubmitting tomorrow, and if it is, that will be it. It'll be done, and it will be distributed to public broadcasting channels across the country on November 22nd. So, yes, and yeah, you don't know what you don't know, and it's a learning experience for me, and I'm hoping it's a learning experience for you. So that's that. The next thing, if you have any questions about this, I'd be happy to do a little video about this, because really, my eyes were sort of opened up to, the difference between just finishing your movie for YouTube or whatever, and actually having to deal with the real world, which is presented all kinds of things you have to deal with that they expect from you. So if you want, I can actually do a full video about that if you're interested. The next thing I want to talk about is stylistic choices for your documentary. They don't cost a lot. Right after this. So as we know, no video would be complete without talking about our amazing sponsor, Follow Focus Gears. I do this every week. I don't pre-record these. So Follow Focus Gears, Sean down in Georgia, he's magic, as we know. He does the caps, the step-up rings, and the Follow Focus Gears. That's the name of the company, the gears right here. This is the actual 28 millimeter lens that we shot almost 90% of all the interviews on Outcast Nation on. And you turn this $50 FD Canon lens into a cinema-modded lens. And he will make a lens for any... He'll make a lens. He'll make a ring for any lens that you have. He will make a ring for any lens that you don't have. 10% off for everything you get from the man. Give him your business. I know I'm silly, but really, their product is the best of all the companies that make this stuff. So give him your business. 10% off on everything that he sells. And I would be remiss if I didn't shout out to SAC and Sydney and how wonderful they've made my life since SAC has come into my life. And hopefully one day SAC will be a sponsor of this channel. I love you, Sydney. All right, back to the video. Okay, so let's get into the stylistic choices of your documentary film. Now, I'll tell you that when I started, like Rescue Brooklyn, had no stylistic choices at all. I was running around Brooklyn with Sean Casey, following him on animal rescues, shooting adoptions. All of that took place in the animal rescue, and a lot of it took place with me and Sean in his van driving around Brooklyn or out, chasing animals. So there were no stylistic choices in that, and it was my first documentary. I didn't know what the hell I was doing anyway. My second documentary, Part of the Village, which was about Jack Hardy, that was almost entirely shot in my music studio with interviews with the people that knew Jack. There was some street stuff in Greenwich Village, but most of it took place in my studio. I had guitars on the back wall, and it felt right for the project. He was a folk musician, and the people we were interviewing were all folk musicians. When I got into Trumpism and the American Jewish community, that whole movie was more of a personal thing, so I didn't think a lot about the stylistic choices I was making. Most of the interviews were done either in people's homes, people's offices, or me on the road shooting B-roll and basically voicing over that. It worked, but I felt that it was getting a little bland, I think was the word. It was emotional. So when I did Rising Tides, I'd hoped to up the game and be a little bit more stylistic in my lighting, but again, I was a one-man band and I could only do what I could do. So a lot of, again, offices, a lot of natural light, and I think that while the movie did great and people loved it, and I think that it made a difference, for me stylistically it was lacking, which is why when we decided to do Outcast Nation, I had a whole other idea stylistically, interview-wise. Up until Outcast Nation, all of my interviews were done with my subject speaking to me off camera. After watching Cartel Land by Matthew Heineman and shot by the wonderful Matthew Porwall, I was inspired because, as you can see in the video, it's really the close-ups of the interviews, and they're looking dead down the barrel. They're talking to the camera, and that inspired me because what I really wanted for Outcast Nation was our lived experts. Well, everybody really talking to the camera, talking to the people directly who are going to be watching this movie. Because again, when you're talking about a community that is unseen, like the homeless youth in New York City, I want them telling their story directly to the people that are watching it. So my first stylistic choice on Outcast Nation was they're going to talk to the barrel. They're not going to talk to the interviewer off camera. They're going to tell their stories directly to the camera. And to me, that worked really, really well. The other thing we did was to sort of equalize everybody in the film. All of the major interviews we did against a black backdrop with some very sort of harsh lighting, which is what I was going for. And you can see here in the clips, that's what we got. And I felt that it really boosted the stories of our lived experts, but also allowed us to bring a little emotionality into the storytelling. I didn't want flat white. I didn't want sterile, which is why I also made the lens choices of getting those FD lenses and cinemoning them. So I got that old Canon glass, which gave us this amazing sort of cinematic feel. So it's between the lenses, the choices to shoot down the barrel, and the black backdrop, it gave me a stylistic choice that I'm really happy with. I'm already thinking about the next movie and what that's going to be about. But let's go back and let's talk about your choices. So where can you shoot? Well, depending on who you're interviewing, somebody's home, somebody's office, some other location, whether it's exterior or interior. And then you have to make the decision of how much of that location can you control. Is it somebody's office where you've got a lot of natural light and you can just shoot that way? I did that. Most of Rising Tides was all natural light. I used windows, I used open doors to get that sort of like natural look, because I didn't want the lighting or anything else taking away from the people that were telling their stories, or the science, which can get away from you. So I wanted very simple, very clean, but again, nice lighting. So most of Rising Tides was natural light. So are any of these locations usable by just using natural light and maybe like a reflector? Because that's easy. You bring your camera, you bring a reflector, set up where you've got some contrast, and you're good to go. I think that that is the easiest way for your first documentary, because not having to lug lights around and looking for places to set them up. Also, if you're a one-man band, having to set up lighting and then sound and the whole thing is hard. But it's doable. So the second part is finding a location that maybe has some light, but then could be augmented by, let's say, a small light that will augment your natural light. So this way you bring one or two lights, find a nice location, you can augment that with other lighting and create some contrast and some shadow, some negative fill. All of that can work great. And then the third obvious choice is in a studio. We actually set up a studio in my living room. We had a gigantic black backdrop you can see in the picture. We had two cameras going, and the sound was great because it was in my living room. We had no outside sound. We had nothing blocking what we were doing. So we were able to create a studio atmosphere in my living room. And honestly, you can see this lighting. It's two lights. It's our small rig 150 with reflector, not even a softbox, high angle, and then a very small LED light at 3300 degrees off to the side to give us some nice fill. That's it. That's all the lighting we did, and you can see it looks pretty cool. So that's the first part, the stylistic choice of what it's going to look like. More importantly, I think, is how you're going to do your interviews. Like I said, like most of my documentaries up until Outcast Nation were all off camera, talking to me about whatever it is they were talking about. Outcast Nation, I made the choice to have them not just direct to camera, but up close. I was mostly using a 28 millimeter FD lens, close, like probably no more than 3 feet away. And that gave us this amazing sort of cinematic view with most of the background going away. And to me, that was so intimate, and it played into the story we were telling. Now, that might not be for you. You may not want to be that close. You may not want to have them talking to the camera. Sometimes it's uncomfortable getting your subject to talk to the camera and not you. And I'll tell you, sometimes they did talk to me off camera, or to Kate, my producer. But for the most part, once you get them talking and they're into the barrel, it works. And for me, that was the choice. The next documentary we're doing, which I can tell you now is called Denied, and it's about the American healthcare system and the crap show that it is. We're not going to shoot that way. We're going with like very clean, very, very new. We're going to get the Vespid primes for the C300. It's going to be stark. It's going to be cool. Very, very sterile, I'm thinking, because that's what we're looking at. Those are the stories we're going to be telling, these insurance company nightmares. So I can tell you that we are in development for that right now. And we'll get into that more. But so my stylistic choice already for Denied is a world away different from Outcast Nation. So when you make these decisions and when you think about, what you're looking at, also, I can tell you that you should be looking at other people's documentaries. Like, the reason I came up with the idea for Outcast Nation was because I watched Cartel Land and how Matthew Heineman and Matt Porwall set up those interviews. They were close, they were dark, they were shadowed, and these people were telling their stories directly to the camera. And to me, that moved me. They also did very much the same thing in The Trade, which was the other thing that Matt shot with Matthew, or Matthew shot with Matthew. You should watch these things. You should watch The War Room. You can see here, D.A. Pennybaker following the Clinton campaign back in the late 80s, all shot on film, handheld. That was a choice. Seaspiracy, another, very low budget documentary, was shot by Ali Tbz, handheld on a small camera. Michael Moore's stuff, even though he makes different movies, you can think Roger and Me, as you can see here, or Sicko, or Fahrenheit 11/9. They have a quality, that it's Michael Moore. Now now he's got a larger crew, but originally it was him, a cinematographer, and a sound person, and his producer. All of those play into a stylistic choice. I've kind of found my style of storytelling, my style of shooting. I like shooting myself. Not shooting myself, but I like shooting my own stuff. I can be in control of what is being seen and how it's being seen. Exposure, all that kind of stuff. But you make the choices for you, but really, the only way for you to make those choices is to watch a lot of documentaries and see what other people are doing. If you can figure out what they're doing and how that relates to the story that you're telling, and then put your own spin on it, you will come to your own style. It may take 2 movies, it may take 6 movies. Like, it's taken me up until my 6th, Outcast Nation was my 5th. Going into my 6th, what I really want to be as a documentary filmmaker. So that's it. It's not a very long video, but I hope you got something out of it. And please subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Hit the like button, please. We're getting those likes now. It's very, very cool. The movie is Outcast Nation. It will be distributed to public broadcasting stations across the nation November 22nd. You want to learn about documentary films, my book, Documentary Filmmaking 101, down below. And then our budget program, which I'm literally using on Denied right now, right here, all for good downloads. And remember, keep shooting.